Good evening, I'm Flynn in Hong Kong. Welcome to View TV News. Coming up on tonight's show. The government confirms controversial plans to rent out part of West Kowloon terminus to the mainland, allowing officials across the border to enforce national laws there. Rocky Tuan, a well-known biotechnology scientist, is to become Chinese University's new vice-chancellor. And Donald Trump pleads with Republicans to do the right thing ahead of a key healthcare vote in his bid to roll back Obamacare. Well, it is official. Hong Kong will be leasing out part of the West Kowloon terminus to the mainland for the high-speed rail link. Under the controversial plans, mainland officials will enforce border clearance and national laws in about 1/4 of the area. The so-called mainland port area includes 2 sections of the station, the platform and inside train carriages. The ports will effectively no longer be considered Hong Kong territory. That makes it exempt from the Basic Law, which in normal circumstances prohibits officials from enforcing mainland laws exempt in circumstances involving national matters. The property rights of the site will still belong to Hong Kong, though. The government said it will seek approval from the National People's Congress Standing Committee and table a bill to LegCo. It also sought to reassure Hong Kong residents that the plan will not bring any significant changes.
Imagine you are now having an express railway, but with no co-location. What would happen to a passenger? The passenger will still go through 2 CIQ checkpoints, and once you are within the mainland port area, you would be having the same treatment. There is no change because co-location would not by itself change the rights or obligations, nor would it change the CIQ procedure or the applicable law.
Well, the reactions towards the government's co-location proposal so far have not been positive. Pan-democratic lawmakers and legal professionals claim the co-location arrangement clearly violates the Basic Law.
Rimsky-Yuen is obviously trying very hard to employ his art of rhetoric to cover his own back. But then he quoted Article 7, saying that all land in Hong Kong is Chinese state property. But then after that, he would quote Article 20, saying that the NPC would give the power to the Hong Kong government to rent that piece of land or whatever you call it, property, back to the mainland authorities. I mean, he just, what he said just simply doesn't add up.
The Basic Law clearly stipulates that mainland laws generally cannot be applied in Hong Kong, that mainland officials, when they're in Hong Kong, have to abide by Hong Kong law. We are having people who, in the name of so-called convenience, which is actually not certain anyway, trying to circumvent our mini-constitution.
Well, to other local news now, and the Chinese University of Hong Kong has gotten itself a new vice-chancellor. Professor Rocky Tuan will succeed Joseph Sung, whose term will end next year. The university's governing council made the decision after a global search for a suitable candidate was held. Tuan is an internationally renowned biotechnology scientist who's currently working at the University of Pittsburgh. Well, more than 230 people have died from the flu in Hong Kong during the last 2 months as hospitals struggle to cope with the surge in patients this flu season. Hong Kong University microbiology professor Yuan Kwok Yung said up to 20% of the patients are elderly. He urged the government to distribute Tamiflu pills to nursing homes as a preventative measure, adding that the medication is about 90% effective. Miramar Travel has been fined thousands of dollars for misleading customers over fuel surcharges in the first time a local travel agency has been found guilty of violating the Trade Descriptions Ordinance. West Kowloon Magistracy ruled that the agency failed to inform its customers of a drop in fuel surcharges by airlines during March to April 2015. The company has been slapped with a $9,000 fine and asked to give $15,000 in compensation to affected customers. The firm's Deputy General Manager, Thomas Chan, was also fined $9,000. A Chinese fighter jet came close to colliding with an American surveillance aircraft over the weekend. This after 2 Chinese fighter jets intercepted the US aircraft over the East China Sea in a move that is criticized by Washington. Dan Epstein has more on this for us from Beijing.
The American warship was intercepted by 2 Chinese fighter jets about 80 nautical miles off the east coast of China. One of the 2 jets came within 300 feet of the American jet, forcing it to change its course in a move which the Pentagon describes as unsafe. But it's not uncommon for these sorts of interceptions to take place, especially within the region that China calls its air defense identification zone. But America disagrees with this term, saying that these were just international waters. Now, there's definitely been a ramping up of China's PLA activity recently. As we speak, one of their most advanced warships is en route to the Baltic Sea, where it will undergo joint military exercises with Russia's Navy. It's also coming up to the 90th anniversary of the founding of the PLA. Ordinarily, they have a military parade. This time, some type of war games are planned for Inner Mongolia, in which there will be mock Western forces taking on Chinese forces. Of course, both will be Chinese troops, but one of the people in attendance will be Chinese President Xi Jinping.
To the US now, where Republicans are set to vote on a key motion which could make or break President Donald Trump's healthcare bill. Trump is pressing senators to do the right thing and rally behind his bid to repeal Obamacare. Speaking on the eve of a vote over whether to open debate on an overhaul of the healthcare law, Trump spoke at length about families who had been hurt by former President Barack Obama's signature healthcare bill. It remains unclear whether Trump can unite Republicans on the issue. The party is divided between moderates concerned over millions losing their insurance and conservatives who want to see more done to reverse Obamacare. It would be a welcome legislative win for Trump, whose 6-month presidency has been dogged by allegations of corruption with Russia during the election campaign.
There is still time to do the right thing. And for Senate Republicans, this is their chance to keep their promise. Over and over again, they said repeal and replace, repeal and replace. But they can now keep their promise.
Israeli authorities have agreed to replace metal detectors at the entrance of the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem's Old City with less obstructive security. That's after a serious spat with Jordan over days of bloody clashes between Israelis and Palestinians. David Doyle has the details.
Metal detectors being removed from the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem in an apparent U-turn by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and after more than a week of the bloodiest clashes between Israelis and Palestinians in years. Israel put the security measures in place after 2 policemen were shot dead by an Israeli Arab gunman who had smuggled weapons into the compound. But it angered Muslim religious authorities who saw the move as an affront to a delicate status quo that has, for decades, governed the site, which is sacred to both Jews and Muslims. The subsequent violence led to the deaths of 3 Israelis and 4 Palestinians on Friday and Saturday.
Show restraint.
That prompted the UN Security Council to convene a meeting in a bid to calm the situation. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas also suspended official contacts with Israel over the crisis. But, reluctant to capitulate to Palestinian pressure, Netanyahu said on Sunday that the metal detectors were staying put. That decision was reversed early on Tuesday morning, after a meeting lasting several hours. A statement issued by senior ministers at that forum said they had decided to act on the recommendations of security advisors and would replace the metal detectors with a, quote, smart checking system. 100 million shekels, or $28 million being allocated for equipment and additional police officers, they said. Reuters witnesses saw municipal workers installing metal beams in the narrow streets around the site for closed-circuit television. And Israeli media said there are plans to invest in advanced camera systems.
In an unexpected move, Polish President Andrzej Duda has vetoed 2 out of 3 controversial judicial reform bills that had already been given the green light by the country's parliament. This after days of protests which have seen tens of thousands take to the streets, calling on the president to reject the bills. Plans, they say, will undermine judicial independence and place courts directly under political control. One of the plans is to replace Supreme Court judges with government nominees. Duda said he agrees there is a need to overhaul the judiciary, but the bills don't match up to the Constitution. The move seems to have caught his ruling right-wing party, Law and Justice, off guard, but Prime Minister Peter Szydło said he would not yield to pressure to drop the reforms. Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has vowed to carry on his controversial drug war. In a national address, he said criticisms from both local and abroad wouldn't stop the crackdown. His approach to cracking down on drugs has defined his leadership, but it has also led to an international outcry as rights activists blast Duterte for turning a blind eye to the police's extrajudicial killing spree of suspects and drug users. But the leader has called on critics not to trivialize the drug war by demanding human rights.
The fight will be unremitting as it will be unrelenting. Despite international and local pressures, the fight will not stop until those who deal in it understand that they have to cease, they have to stop, because the alternative are either jail or hell.
OK, coming up next, the latest from the world of business. OK, we kick off with some local market action. The Hang Seng Index once again